Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Brilliantly Resilient Live. We are already having a good time in the Zoom room. I'm so happy you all were able to join us with our buddy, Bob Burg, who always has us smiling, laughing, and we are in for a very good time today. I'm so excited for Mary Fran and I to introduce you to our buddy Bob if you haven't seen or heard his work yet, because he's been so influential in both of our journeys with being go-givers in the work that we're doing. So Bob, thanks so much for starting your day with us here.
Kristen and Mary Fran, I can't think of any two people I'd rather start the day with.
Yay! We've already run through our repertoire of imitations and funny jokes and all sorts of stuff. So we are in our comfort zones right now, baby.
Warm-ups have occurred. We are ready to go.
And you know, I always think, when I think Bob Burg, I always have a smile on my face, because years ago when I came to your work, when it came into my journey, I just always turned to your podcast and the stuff that you had out online, because you do stuff with such joy in your work. And you really impacted me with this whole concept of there's the go-getter, but if you are a go-giver and give more value, as much value as you possibly can, what you get in return is huge. And when I started, I had believed that for a while. And I think that there's so many people out there saying, no, you got to go get, and you're number one, and you're number one, as opposed to your way of describing it. It made a huge switch in my life and my work. And I really started to see the benefits of that.
No, I appreciate that. And, and I think a lot of it too is how we define certain terms. Because if you take, like, let's say go-getter, if you look at that as getting, that, go-getting, it means your focus is on the getting. And we would say shift your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving, of course, we simply mean constantly, consistently providing immense value to others. But on the other hand, being a go-getter, if you define go-getter as simply a person of action, that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we like people to be, we would say go-getters, people of action, and go-givers, people who are absolutely laser focused on providing immense value to others. What we would say is we don't want people to be go-takers. Because that go-taker is really the person, but in the context that you used, get or getter, absolutely, we would just say that's a go-taker. Yeah. And so, with being a go-giver, what's interesting about that is that when you focus, as I know the two of you do all the time, because I've been following the two of you for years, your whole amazing group of four that are just so wonderful, and when we look at focusing on giving value to others constantly and consistently, we know that not only is it a more pleasant way of conducting business and living life, I think that's fairly intuitive, but it's also the most financially profitable way as well. And not for any way out there, woo-woo, magical, mystical type of reasons. Oh, just go do good things and good. No, I mean, that's great, but that's not it at all. It's actually very practical. It makes a lot of sense logically when you think about it, because when you're that person who can take your focus off of yourself and genuinely place it on others, making their lives better, helping them through their challenges, helping bring them closer to happiness, if you will. Well, people feel good about you. People want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to do business with you if they need what you offer, of course, but they also want to talk you up to others. They want to be what we call your personal walking ambassador. So when you shift your focus and you place it on others, you're really creating the benevolent context for your success.
Oh my gosh, I can't even think about where to start here, because I have about a million questions and comments in my mind about what you just said. But one of the things that Kristen and I, because of where we came from, Kristen's raising two blind kids. My son was in heroin addiction for many, many years. when you're in that place of where you've been sucker punched and challenged and smacked down, it's very challenging at first to think about shifting the focus off of yourself, because naturally that's where you are. However, I will say that but your basis of this giving attitude has helped both of us to move beyond our challenges and reach out to other people, build that tribe, build those relationships, which then do transfer into these other things.
Exactly.
So it's a great place to start. And as hard as it is to take the focus off of yourself, it's also a relief.
Right. Well, that's, and of course, the two of you knew that intuitively long before you ever read the book, and because it's who you are. And so, yeah, when you have a situation when you've been, just really, I mean, how do you deal with those kinds of situations? And hey, we're human beings. And I don't. You can take all the personal development literature that says, all those things like, "Oh, be glad everything happens. We're in this and
Blah, blah, blah.
yeah, blah blah
It's
blah."
not a blessing. All that crap is not a blessing.
Right.
I just want to put that out there.
Right. It's like the adults and the Peanuts cartoons, right? Wah, 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 wah. Now, we might find out, and we might find out a year later, 2 years, 10 years later, or maybe in the next lifetime, that there was obviously a reason for that. But again, I'm going to add blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like, right? No, it stinks when something happens like that.
Mhm.
Okay, it absolutely does. We as human beings have a decision to make when it does. And sometimes, by the way, we don't make that decision for a little while, because for a while we need to just kind of deal with that horror.
Yes.
Okay. But eventually we have to make a decision. And that is, am I going to kind of live in this? Okay. Or am I now going to do something about it to the degree that I can?
That is exactly what we talk about. We say you have to make the decision. Are you just visiting that place, or are you going to set up camp and live there?
Right.
And then it becomes, no, you're not going to solve the whole problem, but what can you do about it? And very often, the thing that you can do may be removing you from that situation, but it is something along the lines of you're talking about. You reach out to somebody else. You see if there's some way that you can provide value, either through your experiences that you're having or whatever, to somebody else, and build those relationships. Because I think, like what I hear from you, that's kind of the basis of where all this starts, is building the relationships.
It is. And you take the case of my friends, Scotty and Tiffany Smiley, two of my favorite people. I don't know if
Love them.
We do. Yes.
Yeah. And right after, they were married, this gorgeous couple. I mean, the two of them, right, are just like the picture perfect
cover models.
American
Definitely cover
couple,
models.
right?
Yep.
And he goes off to war. He's over in Iraq, and he gets nailed by a suicide bomber and lost his sight. And when you go through his book, Hope Unseen, which is just an amazing book of hope and faith and a relationship, and the two of them are just two of my favorite people in the world. I just love them both. At first, no, he was absolutely, beside himself, miserable. He was just wanted to just give it all up, and he was right. But eventually he made that decision, and with the help and support of Tiffany, and the two of them have accomplished. He's accomplished more, by the way, since being blinded than I ever have.
Yeah.
With good eyes. Okay. This guy's climbed mountains and, just on amazing things. And but hey, he'll be the first to tell you, that doesn't mean that he, as much faith as he has, and the two of them are a very faith-based couple, that doesn't mean they sat there right away and said, oh yeah, I'm sure there's a reason for this, and we're going to really make the best of it. And this is good that this, no, of course not. Of course not.
Yeah. That's an important distinction. Because I think a lot of times people think that those of us that have moved on from things and uncovered our brilliance and now have influence in the world and whatnot in our niche that we work in, think we just went, oh, okay, thank you for that challenge. Let me just do something new, as opposed to throwing stuff at the wall and, and
And being
crying on the
mad.
couch for a few years.
Exactly.
So here's one of the things that I picked up from your new book, which is what I really want to get into talking about, the GoGiver Influencer. And first of all, I love the fact that it's a story. It's this story with the characters that have a couple of things that really hit me. Different but complementary sets of principles. I love that, because I think very often when we think of our principles, we think of our moral character and the things that we're just not going to compromise on, and this is us, and everybody who doesn't think that way is wrong. However, the fact that sets of principles can be complementary and you can work with people who are different from you, to me, is a revelation to a lot of people, especially in this polarized society that we live in.
Yeah, and when we talk about compromise, I just want to make the point that compromise is not where we want people to go to first. Okay, we never want to compromise on our values themselves. It's, as you said, understanding that different values can still be complementary when you find a way to make it a win for everyone involved. The two characters in the book, the two protagonists, Jillian and Jackson, both would have made, as they were trying to do business with each other, because each actually had what the other wanted. It should have been a business, not partnership at that point, but just a business situation made in heaven, right? Mm-hmm. And yet, because they were both focused on their own principles without taking the other into consideration, thus not, and they weren't bad people, they just were wrapped up in themselves, as most human beings are. Mm-hmm. Instead of looking for what that other person needed, wanted, desired, and then asking themselves how they could tie the two together to advance both of them. See, that's collaboration. And while, again, compromise at times in life, you've got to compromise at times in certain ways. Mm-hmm. But never on principles, never on values. You always want to make sure that when you can, you go toward collaboration where both parties win. Compromise, which, as one of the characters in the story said, comes from the ancient Greek for nobody really gets what they want and both sides are miserable. Exactly what it means.
They say that in ancient Greek? Wow.
They really had a way with words, with language. And so, compromise by its very nature does mean you're giving something up that you want. Okay. Mm-hmm. It is kind of a lose-lose by mm-hmm. nature, because on the other hand, collaboration is that 1 + 1 = 3. Excuse me. And that's really where we want to go. So, we can always speak tactfully and respectfully and kindly to another person without compromising our values. And what we want to do is look for ways that we can both advance through taking each other's desires into consideration.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's amazing.
So one of the things one of the 3 parts of our Brilliantly Resilient formula, if you will, there's the reset, the rise, and then the reveal of your brilliance, which you uncover when you go through all of these struggles. So in terms of uncovering your brilliance and where your gifts, talents, and where you should go with your next venture, and being an influencer, it's very interesting to hear you dive into that about you, because we talk about uncovering your values and all the steps to get there. But yeah, then when you start to look for a complementary person to work with and collaborate with, that takes that uncovering your brilliance to a whole new level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, oh, go ahead, Mary.
No, I was going to say, you get to see where you shine in the reflection of where the other person shines, because Ooh. This is what's here, but this is what's here. So how can those two things together make this?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love that. Brilliantly said. I'm going to have to tweet that one.
Yeah, I'm liking that because we keep talking about, especially, so I'm thinking in the context of right now, as all these business folks and, professionals are trying to rethink everything with COVID-19 taking so many things off the table. And we have heard time and time again from our guests about collaborating with other people, reaching out for help, putting your hand up. Tiffany Smiley's huge on raise your hand and ask for help and collaborate. But man, what we haven't heard yet is this whole look for, not necessarily just people that share your values and principles, but look for complementary to collaborate.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, and again, we always have to define terms, I guess, and
Yeah.
know where on the. Obviously, when we say share your values, there's certain values, sure. I mean, when you look at the, honesty, integrity, and blah blah blah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's certain ones that are not. You're not going to do. Obviously, if someone's dishonest and that's their values, you're not going to work with
Yeah.
them. But we're talking about something else. We're really talking about, in a sense, strengths
Mm-hmm.
and areas where that person's values and what they hold to be of value, what they hold to be important, say, is complementary with what you do and with who you are. So it's never purposely collaborating with someone whose values are different in terms of right and wrong.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well,
But
there are things that you just simply never compromise on. As you said,
right,
they're your givens.
right,
This is my baseline. I don't go below that baseline.
right.
But it's interesting to me because one of the phrases that I absolutely loved, and it was in the information about the book, was how this whole process of looking at other people and complementary things and all can help. I love this phrase, defang conflicts.
Mm.
I love the idea of, instead of going at somebody like this, like, that ready to fight, you pull back and you take a moment. And this goes into something else that you talk about. Kristen and I need to do this, which we don't. Make calm your default setting. And as you do so, you become more you. We don't have that setting, but apparently we
You don't
need
think I have calm as a
I
setting?
don't think you do.
Well, it's something I certainly had to work on for a long time with myself, and yet there are certain areas where I don't, right? And so we all have those kind of things where our emotions just overcome us. But what you're referring to is when we talk about setting the frame and resetting the frame, and we look at, and this is probably the most important aspect, in a sense, of influence and persuasion and so forth. What is a frame? Well, a frame is the foundation from which everything else evolves. So when you set a proper frame, both for yourself and for the other person, you're 90% of the way, 90% of the way there. One of the, favorite, and I may have shared this with you on an earlier interview, I'm not sure, but one of my favorite frame stories, perhaps my very favorite frame story, is when I was at a Dunkin' Donuts. As you can tell, I'm a Dunkin' Donuts fan. For those who are watching this, they can see the Dunkin' Donuts cup. I think this is also just an audio. I am holding a Dunkin' Donuts cup, as though that needed to be clarified. So I was at a Dunkin' Donuts, and there was a little kid, a little boy, a toddler, who was running around the restaurant, and his parents called him over to their table. So as he started to walk over, he took a spill on the floor. He fell. He didn't hurt himself, but you could tell he was, shaken up. He was confused. That was not within his realm of experience. And immediately he looked over at his parents, the two people he trusts most in the world. Why? To get their interpretation of
Hmm.
what happened. He wanted to know what's next. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? And I truly believe that had the parents gotten upset and uptight and panicky and, oh no, my poor baby, are you okay? He'd have started to cry, right? But what they did is they handled it just so beautifully. They walked over quickly, but very, very calmly. They had a very, a calm spirit. They smiled and they laughed and they said, "Oh, what a great trick! How fun that is!" Oh, okay, and immediately the little boy started to laugh.
Hmm.
Now, what the parents did, as you know, because I'm sure you've done this, is they set a productive frame from which he could operate.
Hmm.
Right? It wasn't a matter of trying to calm him down from crying. It was they set the frame before that was even an issue.
Hmm.
Okay.
Wow.
So when you set a proper frame, and you can do this with anyone, you're 90% of the way toward where you are. Now, the difficulty can be in resetting someone else's negative frame. And you remember that Joe, and I mean, Joe was in the first story, in Jackson, when he was speaking with the judge, she was one of the two mentors in the story, because the story had two mentors and two proteges instead of one. And he came to their meeting very upset, very disgruntled, very discouraged, and she had to reset his frame. Now, how do you do this in real life, with someone? Well, the first thing you do is, again, you make calm your default setting. So let's say, for example, and we take this in the sales context, if we may, and you're about to do a presentation with someone. You don't really have a relationship with this person. They don't really know you. You don't know them. They come to the table with sort of a defensive attitude, and they let you know, well, this is just a, exploring this thing, and I'm not buying anything. I'm not an easy sale. For whatever reason, they feel they're very defensive, and they can now. If you don't default into calm, but you react instead of respond, if you react to her frame and you buy into that, now you start, arguing, and it's back and forth, or there's sort of an air of tension over the play, and that's probably not going to have a good result. What if instead you reset the frame by saying something like, Janet, while we've been able to help a lot of people with this product, whether or not it's the right answer for you, we simply can't know without exploring deeper and determining if it's, going to fit your needs. So please know that our discussion is really for both of us to determine that. And if it does, great. If not, that's okay too. So
Wow.
boom, you now just reframe this from two adversaries to two allies who are both focused on the same thing, discovering whether it's in her advantage to buy.
Wow.
Wow.
That's amazing. And I think that can be, the same principles here, whether we're talking about them. And this is one of the most interesting things that I love about all of your work, that while it applies for the purposes of what you do very often to the sales world and the business world, these principles apply across the board. They apply to relationships. They apply to everything. When you approach another person, as you said, not as an adversary, but to just say to somebody, okay, I see that you're in, this place. You have to acknowledge other person's right to feel the way they do, even though you may not understand it.
Sure.
And I think
Absolutely.
sometimes perhaps even that allows you to operate a little bit more on the same plane, as opposed to this, conflicted pounding of each other.
Yeah, well, I often say that empathy, while the dictionary definition is the identification with or vicarious experiencing of another person's feelings, which says how they feel. The fact is, we don't know how someone else feels.
Right.
So, we're not them. We haven't had their same experiences. So what I say, that empathy is not necessarily understanding how the other person feels. Empathy is understanding and communicating, and it might be by what you say or how you say it, or just how you show up. Empathy is simply communicating that you understand they're feeling something.
Yes.
And this something is distressful to them, and you are there to help them through that. That to me is empathy.
I appreciate that, because I think it's for lack of a better word, and I don't mean insulting, but sometimes I think people take offense when someone says, "Oh, I know how you feel." My immediate reaction is, "Oh, no, you do not know how I feel."
You've been here.
So when you at least acknowledge, like you said, that they feel something, this is all about, and I want to get back to the idea of providing value. Just validating another person's right to have an experience is providing value to them.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's one of the I would say, top aspects of human nature, that people want to feel as though another person understands that they are feeling something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's really all it takes, and then be willing to listen.
And I think we're so often told what we're supposed to feel, what we're supposed to think, that one small step can go so far in meeting someone at that halfway point where then you can have productive discussions, regardless of what the end goal is for either party, where you can just go, hey, I get it. You're going through something. I don't know what you're feeling, but I've been through stuff. So I got a little bit of an idea of, just your place right now. So you start with that mutual respect, and then you can take off from there. And that applies again in business, in personal relationships, in family relationships. It's all about building relationships.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
absolutely.
interesting. As I'm listening to this whole conversation, I'm thinking this is actually what I believe is part of the criteria people should be looking for in there. We talk about building a tribe around you, even if it's very small, just a few people to help you in your resilience, in your reset and your rise, and moving forward with your brilliance. And it just came into my mind because you mentioned the smileys earlier, Bob, about when my oldest blind son, Michael, met Scotty years ago. That's how I met them, and we became friends. And it was so extraordinary to me to watch Scotty say to my Michael, I don't remember all the words he used, but it wasn't a, dude, I know what you're feeling because you're blind too and I'm blind too. He didn't do that at all. He just made it this whole, I've been on this journey, lost my vision, and you're on this. Like, you just kind of met him where he's at. Like, I'm walking a similar walk. And you have your own, but guess what? I've done all these amazing things. And he just was like the epitome of a role model that you want for your child, right? But he did it in that amazing way of, he could have very well said, I'm blind too, but he honored that Michael has a different journey.
Right.
And he has. And they just kind of hit, and watching my son just light up, and when Michael is very relaxed, like his shoulders just kind of, when he's with his people, his shoulders just relax, and he has followed him ever since.
Oh, I'm so glad. I didn't even know you knew the Smileys, when we started this interview. So I was so glad.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to me, people with this mindset, and we go back to the idea of talking about building a tribe and all, people who cultivate a certain mindset, the universe has a way of bringing you together or putting those people in your path. Yeah. So your power in this is initiating those value-driven, go-giving types of relationships and turning that out to the universe. And I'm not a woo-woo person, but I do believe that there is that energy that comes from this.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, yeah, when I say woo-woo, I mean that the magical, mystical stuff.
Yes.
I mean, thinking something doesn't make it come true. There's more to it. It begins with thought. We certainly, thought is extremely powerful. Everything that ever happens begins because someone had a thought. Okay. Yeah. But we all know there's a lot more to it than just thinking really hard for a Ferrari. And so, that's what I call magical, mystical, it's.
Yeah. But it takes that action step. It takes a commitment to living a life that provides value for other people. Exactly. And we could talk about this forever and ever and ever. But what I really want is for you to tell people where they can find you, where they can find your work. I want them to get hold of the GoGiver influencer. So let us know where you're at and how people can reach you, Bob.
Yeah, best place is just Burg, and that's burg.com, and just explore through the website. There's lots of great resources there. So burg.com.
Okay. And as per usual, we always love talking to you, because we laugh, we learn stuff, and we just come out feeling lighter and more joyful. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you both. I appreciate you both greatly.
Thanks, Bob. And thanks for bringing Mary Fran to a level of calm. Look what happened.
Doesn't happen often.
We're going to do a morning meeting every day, and Bob's going to come on for 5 minutes and bring her down a few notches, and then we'll be productive.
With my Dunkin' coffee. And
there you go. So, and we'll have coffee in hand. Thanks so much for joining us again, Bob. And thanks to everybody for tuning in. Go check out burg.com, and you'll see all the great work that Bob has out there. And make sure you follow him on Instagram too, because your Instagram has been phenomenal with the quotes, and they're nice short tidbits to really refocus and reset. And if you're still having issues with resetting your mindset, go to brilliantlyresilient.net/freebies. We got a few things there for you that can help you. So until next time, thank you all for joining us.
Bye, everybody.